And now I suppose I'm just going to introduce myself. Thank you very much, everyone. Give me 1 second while I get my screen ready. Let's share. Everyone can see that, I hope. Um, so I'll be speaking today. We're going to just pull back from Seceon specific just a little bit to talk about the wider threat landscape. As my primary source, I was going to focus on CISA. This is an American organization focused on cybersecurity threats. Um, I think, we can just toss up the poll even just right now, if possible. Just is everybody here aware of CISA? And if you are in charge of defense, cybersecurity for your organization, is it something that you are keeping an eye on? So it's got a good threat feed, and it's just worth knowing about if you're not. And I will also be sharing the link for that in just a second. So let me just move that out of the way. Okay. So very quickly, my background is my name is Maggie MacAlpine. I've been in cybersecurity for about 14 years. I've been involved with organizations like MITRE and also with places like Cybereason. I won't bore you with all of the details, but if you are at some point in the future interested in connecting, please feel free to reach out, for example, on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect. Um, so we're just going to start by diving into kind of the purpose of this, which is to focus on how managed service providers are, in particular in enterprise, are also being key targets according to CISA. CISA has flagged an increase in cyber attacks specifically targeted at MSPs. I'm going to be focusing a little more on MSPs because I work with our partners. But a lot of the information here also applies to enterprise as well, of course. They've seen a sharp rise in supply chain attacks and ransomware attacks over recent years. We'll get into some of those statistics in a minute. These attacks often exploit the interconnected nature of MSPs and their clients, leading to widespread impact when a breach occurs. In this presentation, we'll be looking at some of the most prominent threats and technical insights from CISA combined with Seceon's capabilities to mitigate it. A lot of you are already very familiar with Seceon, but obviously a lot of these threats can be addressed by our product and services. Um, So let's see, just if you didn't already get it, I just want to say CISA.gov is where you can, news events is one of the places you can go to find some of the advisories that are discussed there. You can see on the right what some of those advisories look like. You should just be on top of those. Okay, so they're becoming so according to CISA, some of the ransomware, phishing, and supply chain attacks are among the top threats to U.S. businesses currently. I know we have an international audience here. This is going to be a little bit more focused on the United States, but I will also be showing later some of the international threats that are out there. Ransomware is a particularly pressing issue, accounting for 70% of all cybersecurity incidents. As reported to CISA in the past year, phishing remains the #1 vector for initial breaches. CISA emphasized that many of these attacks leverage known vulnerabilities in software and that MSPs need to ensure rapid patching and vulnerability management. We'll get into specifics of those threats in the coming slides. But just quickly, while we're here, some of the other threats that CISA is noticing for enterprise and MSPs are things like vulnerable internet-facing services, which is like attackers are exploiting MSPs by going after misconfigured or weakly configured services, especially remote access tools. Brute force attacks, phishing, a lot of those old suspects. And multi-factor authentication not being implemented is huge. I think whenever people are asking, what's a quick and easy thing I should be doing? What should I be doing to protect people? Or my family, or even as an individual, it always is like multi-factor. It's almost, boring at this point. I'm sure if you're in this field a lot, you're hearing it all the time. But really just raising that floor, making it just that much harder for people to access these critical accounts is really, really important. And if you're not implementing it, even especially to your endpoints and to your clients, even your clients who might be resistant to cybersecurity, you might be missing out on a really important vector. I know I'm preaching to the choir for some people here, but it does bear repeating. There's also inadequate network segregation and outdated software and insufficient monitoring and logging are some of the others that I've just wanted to make a note of here about threats and things that MSPs and enterprises should be focusing on. Speaking of ransomware, so if you've ever seen any of my other presentations, first of all, welcome back. But second of all, ransomware is a key focus of mine, and part of that reason is because it does continue to be, extremely critical, extremely impactful on organizations. CISA data shows a 62% increase in ransomware attacks from just 2021 to 2022. Some of this data, of course, is holistic, so it comes out a little bit later, but it's not slowing down in 2024. Attackers are also now employing double extortion and tactics, encrypting the data and threatening to leak it if ransom isn't paid. This has significant implications for MSPs who manage critical client data. Mitigating ransomware requires rapid detection and response and patch response, which obviously Seceon is very good at responding to. I just want to make one quick note on the double extortion. We've actually even seen triple, quadruple, quintuple, the numbers go on. In terms of extortion types. Once they have your data, they're criminals. So they're going to do everything they can to intimidate and steal money from their victims. This means that they might threaten to release the information to the press or to shareholders, or to the police. If, for example, some people believe, or some countries might not, might penalize people who pay the ransom. So they might threaten to say, if you pay, it will help cover this up for you unless you don't pay. So once they have that data, they're going to find every which way and they're going to do a lot of things like trying to keep the clock, ticking, trying to raise that level of anxiety. So things like, pay within the next few hours, pay, if you don't pay this by the next day, the amount's going to go up. They might do things like saying that if you don't pay, they're going to release your information on the dark web and it's going to become a free for all. So these are all tactics that have been observed in the wild. That's why it's first of all, really important to have your plan in place if at all possible in advance. It's really important not to get on that list of people who do pay. Cybereason once put out a study that found that 80% of places that do pay the ransom get hit again, sometimes within 2 to 3 weeks. So also we're seeing increasingly that many ransomware attackers are not actually even giving back the data once they are paid. Or when they do give it back, it's actually damaged. So that's also a concern in terms of turning that money over and continuing to fuel this. Obviously, there's hospitals and there's organizations that really have no choice but to pay. And obviously, there's businesses that could go out of business if they have too much downtime, lost time from the outage. But just be aware that a lot of times, even when they do say they are going to pay it back, they are going to release the data. They don't, and they break a lot of their promises. In fact, they break promises even to other criminals, as we'll see in a second. Just on this note, I like to show just part of this rise of ransomware. You'll notice one of the reasons we're seeing this, exponential increase is because of things like Bitcoin making it easier to transact money across international borders and in untraceable ways. So that's one of the reasons why you see this huge increase of ransomware over the last, I guess 8 years. But you'll also notice that those little bubbles at the end get a little bit smaller because we're seeing an increase of what is called attacks of opportunity, which is basically that once upon a time, with these bigger attacks, you had these really sophisticated ransomware attackers getting their ducks in order and going after these big targets. And now that's still happening, that sort of big game hunting. But you're also seeing, because of ransomware as a service, the entry of lower, less sophisticated criminals into this space. And they're going after anyone they can get. And this is particularly relevant to MSPs who are often, defending less sophisticated clients as well. So just be aware that you have these less sophisticated attackers going after the easiest person they can find. And because of this relative lack of sophistication, these are also the ones who are not always returning the data intact and who have less interest in the sort of honor amongst thieves. Early ransomware anecdotes from early ransomware attacks was that there was a certain amount of honor amongst thieves with these pioneers, so to speak, where they wouldn't go after healthcare organizations or, universities or, and they would definitely give back the money because they knew that their payments relied on the fact that they were known to give back the data once paid. These new ransomware attackers, these latest ones, don't really have that class consciousness, that consciousness of the fact that their payments rely on actually reliably returning the data, and so they're just cheating the end client, they're cheating each other. So that's also something to be just kind of aware of is these smaller attacks on smaller targets, just trying to get money wherever they can, and trying to oftentimes charge less because they know people will pay that more quickly. In general, ransomware is a big business. I used to call it the dark side of dark side of Silicon Valley. These are, sophisticated actors. They are often run much like modern corporations. If you have the chance to go into the Conti leaks as shared by uh, shoot, his name escapes me right now, but there's the Conti leaks in general have a lot of internal memos and Slack conversations, and you see a lot of the same complaints there as you might find at any corporation. Like, for example, the boss is taking vacation time, and I'm stuck here working, and there's long hours and less pay. We've also found in some cases that you see this little map here of one way that ransomware as a service, this diagram actually, as ransomware as a service works, is that the people further downstream will find the targets and implement the ransomware in return for getting the tools from these the ransomware as a service encryption the distributors of the malware. There's an increasing cases of them not getting paid either. They are supposed to split the profits, and the people who are the ones who are actually implementing the ransomware aren't actually getting the money promised to them by other criminals, which is perhaps not surprising when you consider that everyone involved is criminals. But this is just some sort of seeing that little bit of that breakdown of honor amongst thieves, so to speak. Just going into some quick specifics, these are some of the ransomware attack vectors we're seeing with you'll see that many of them will go away and then come right back again, but remote access compromise and phishing still are, among the most common and I suppose popular. So those aren't going away at the moment. Just quickly, these are the top techniques involved with the MITRE attack techniques. Obviously data encrypted for impact is just the definition of ransomware, but these are just some things to keep in mind if you're tracking these sorts of things. And these are some of the most important ways, like I said, that in multi-factor authentication, lockdown of remote management tools, and securing your remote desktop RDPs. These are like the top 3 recommendations. But these are not the only threats that are being addressed towards MSPs right now. So I just tend to linger on ransomware because, like I said, it's a favorite of mine. But we're going to also just say that there's another major threat, according to CISA, is being posed as by hackers of nation-state hackers, basically. Russia, China, North Korea, Iran are some of the usual suspects, at least here in the United States. These advanced persistent threats, or APTs, are often engaged in long-term infiltration, aiming for espionage, intellectual property theft, or infrastructure disruption. Over 50% of reported nation-state activity in 2023 was linked to espionage and data theft, according to CISA. And defending against these persistent threats requires using strong endpoints defense strategy, including vulnerability management and enhanced logging. With Seceon's platform, of course, we ensure that these types of threats are detected early and minimize the dwell time on your networks. So just be sure to have those all set up correctly. And of course, drop questions in the Q&A. I did say that I would quickly mention nation-state actors around the world. This is a graph from Microsoft that I found really quite interesting. It said that nation-state actors, cyber operations increased their global reach, expanding into the global south to more of parts of Latin America and sub-Saharan Africa, while cyber operations remain most pronounced against the US, Ukraine, and Israel, and pervasive throughout Europe, and operations have increased in the Middle East as well. This is owing to Iran. And organizations involved in policymaking and implementation were among those most targeted, in line with many groups' espionage-focused remits. So that this is, their task is in many cases espionage. That's where you're seeing a lot of this nation-state activity. But if you are in an organization that impacts policymakers, they're often coming after those as well. Next up on the threats that might be relevant to you, zero-day vulnerabilities and supply chain attacks are becoming more common. According to CISA, the number of zero-day exploits has increased significantly over the last years. These vulnerabilities are particularly dangerous for MSPs because they often don't have an immediate fix. This is kind of ties back to that fact that you should be checking these CISA alerts because they tend to be some of the earliest who know about it. The supply chain attacks, on the other hand, target third-party software that MSPs use to manage their client networks, and CISA warns that in general, these attacks grew by about 20% in the last couple of years as attackers realized the wide-reaching damage they could cause by compromising a single vendor. Some of you may recall the Kaseya attack was one of the most notorious of these attacks in recent years. Um, this one was interesting to me, was this rise of the cryptojacking threat in general. Another emerging threat is which is the cryptojacking, which saw almost a 400% increase in 2024, according to CISA. Cryptojacking hijacks computing resources to mine cryptocurrency and is often goes unnoticed for long periods of time. Similarly, we're seeing a rise of malware as a service, where attackers can rent the tools. I kind of mentioned that earlier with the ransomware as a service, which is a subset of this, where attackers can rent tools to deploy sophisticated malware campaigns and with minimal effort. This trend underscores the need to have these automated defense systems because of, how, and which is something that actually Secon's quite good at, is addressing these with automated systems with our AI capabilities that can help identifying cryptojacking activity, malware, and other threats that traditional defenses might miss and that human eyes might miss. And finally, this is less of a threat, but it's just something to keep in mind. It's CISA's regulatory compliance guidelines are something that MSPs are increasingly facing pressure from. Compliance with frameworks like GDPR, CCPA, and others is now mandatory for many businesses, and failing to meet these regulations can result in hefty fines. CISA has been instrumental in helping businesses meet these challenges, so they have their own CDM program, so they have some of their own tools they offer. But mostly, I would just say that logging and monitoring are key components of compliance. And obviously, Seceon helps with that by offering automated monitoring and reporting and helping MSPs stay ahead of these regulatory requirements while maintaining the network security. So finally, I just wanted to say that MSPs are facing, and enterprise and cybersecurity landscape in general are facing an evolving, increasingly complex threat landscape. Ransomware and nation-state actors remain at the forefront of these challenges. And in order to stay ahead, people and MSPs and defenders need to adopt proactive security measures that include automated threat detection, robust logging, and patch management. We obviously address all of these, but you should also be aware of, your government and government organizations like CISA and their recommendations, and how they're often at the forefront of detecting these because they're pooling information from from wider sources. So there's a lot of free tools out there as well that can obviously help you. And this is just one I wanted to highlight today as sort of a gold standard here in the United States. But obviously, Seceon plays well with this one. So I wanted to keep my talk a little bit short just so we can remain on time. But I wanted to give, once again, a reminder that you can put any questions in the Q&A, and I will address those as quickly as possible. And do please also reach out, as I said, on Twitter or on LinkedIn, especially if you have any other questions. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now.